Our next panelist is Stephanie Gripne, founder of and CEO of the Impact Finance Center, a nonprofit academic center that identifies, trains, and activates philanthropists and investors to become impact investors. Stephanie also has a background in forestry and ranching. From what I know so far, it sounds like Stephanie is working on many projects that could be beneficial to our community. But for now, can you please provide ideas about how to help groups like Hoʻāhu that have not yet built up credit rating that is generally needed for debt financing, particularly when the community wants to retain most of the equity and control?
Thank you, Kiani. It's an honor to be with you today, and I'm going to share a few slides, and then I'll get to the answer to your first question. But I asked the audience a question about how many millionaires are there in Hawaii? And I don't know the answer. I just Googled it before this presentation, and I got 41,000 millionaires in Hawaii. And there are certainly tens of thousands of more millionaires that visit Hawaii every year. And so that leads me to ask the question of why don't we see more money just easily flowing into projects such as the one Todd was just talking about. And that was my aha about a decade ago. I was a professor at University of Colorado, and I had completed hundreds of transactions. And I just took a step back and I said, Todd is doing amazing work. Why isn't money just rushing like a river towards this project? And this is going to sound silly, but where do the millionaires go to learn how to invest in projects such as the cooperative, the energy cooperative? Turns out there's not a lot of trustworthy investor education places for them to go learn, to identify them, educate them, and activate them. So it's, in some ways, we spend most of our time building up just the people who need the money, and we forget that the people who have the resources, who might care about Hawaii, indigenous communities, and climate, for example, they have the money, but they don't know how to invest in you. And so that was, I took a left turn in my career about 10 years ago and started a multi-university nonprofit center. There's only 15 centers in the country that work on financial innovation, impact investing. And I thought to myself, every university, every community needs one of these centers. So our mission is to identify, educate, and activate individuals and organizations with resources to become impact investors and unlock full spectrum catalytic capital. And then I'll have a quick case study of what we did in Colorado here, where we then create community infrastructure like farmers markets, where the investors can come and we call them asset stewards, can come meet the community stewards and find ways to invest in one another. And so our theory of change is very simple. We try to identify wealthy individuals, families, corporations, and foundations. We educate them and we activate them, because we're not raising a fund. We're not trying to become the investment advisor. We call ourselves non-conflicted investor education. And we do this by evaluating their investment advisor. And we have 200 classes, 50 are recorded up on our institute. And then we do one-on-one training, small group training, and large group training. And so here's an example of what we call full spectrum catalytic capital. Teresa at the Walton Family Foundation, who is the biggest funder of sustainable seafood and oceans globally, 7 to 12 million in grant funding she gives away every year, calls me and says, Stephanie, I have $2,500. You have to teach me how to do this. Now, when I think of Teresa, I think of baseball. And I was presenting to the 3M company recently, which is why I have the Minnesota Twins. And when I think of Teresa, she's major league when it comes to intelligence. She's major league when it comes to alignment and mission. She's major league with access to money. But her experience of writing a $250,000 check to a sustainable seafood cooperative, she's not major league. She's actually at T-ball of doing a loan, for example. And so I said, she said $2,500. I said 10 sessions. That launched our one-on-one training. She's so smart in major league in so many ways. All she needed was a little coaching to learn how to do more than just grant funding. And she decided to do a $500,000 negative 50% return investment to a for-profit sustainable seafood company. Internally, we framed this as a grant. that could be a recoverable grant and get paid back. So we wouldn't put any red flags with the attorneys. Externally, we approached the for-profit sustainable seafood company and said, we'll do a loan with impact milestones. If you do more and more impact, we'll forgive up to 50% of the loan, hence a negative 50% return. Most people don't realize the financial return of a grant is negative 100%, as well as in a large company, an HR dollar, an R&D dollar, a corporate social responsibility dollar. So we then go and argue a negative 50% return is an above market rate return to a negative 100% loss. And so that's the concept of full spectrum capital. Then we take it one step further. We evaluate investment advisors. This is a $15 million foundation in Denver, Colorado, and they have their time, their talent, and their money. We have 85 tools in our toolbox. We determined that their investment advisor is overcharging them $230,000 over 7 years to underperform by $1.4 million. We try to upgrade the investment advisor. They don't want to be upgraded. So we say, we're going to recommend they fire you. They fire them, we find a new one. Then we get all of the money going into alignment with participatory grant making, direct investing, and the money left in the stock market is as impactful as possible. So we work to keep that money aligned. What do you do after you identify, educate, and activate 150 investors? They want to go find opportunities like Todd. So in Colorado, we had a 3-year goal to catalyze 100 million. We ended up doing 200 education classes in person. We found 650 local opportunities. We activated 155 investors, and then we just brought good people together to meet really good people in a farmer's market style. And we catalyzed over 330 million, which was our financial goal. And if you look at the tools, we have like an investor accelerator where groups use a giving circle model, except instead of giving the money, they full spectrum invest it, maybe a negative 10% investment. We create, instead of a marketplace, we do small investor clubs, which you could create on Molokai. We create Main Street character-based lending programs, and we're now rolling out community notes and guarantee models. And the community notes and guarantee models are saying we have amazing nonprofit lenders and community financial development institutions, and we just need to go raise the money so they can lend and make full spectrum investments. So, which is super exciting.
Mahalo, Stephanie. That's so incredible. Yes.
And what's beautiful about it, the community infrastructure we've developed is customizable, participatory. You can take it and you can make it your own and put your own spin and version on it.
Mahalo for that presentation. My second question is, will you please tell us a little bit about how you help shift the way donors and investors make a difference in the community and get a financial return?
Absolutely. So I'll give you a real life case study with the Reese Foundation. They introduced us to Awista Corporation, which is a native community financial development institution. And in the last 25 years, they've lent $79 million to over 69 native CDFIs. And this year, with our support, they raised $27 million to support native CDFIs. So we had another foundation in our fellowship program. And so this is where we want to support you all, creating your investor training programs. The Reese Foundation comes to us and their brother and sister, and they said, we want to invest in Indigenous communities. And they said, and I said, well, there's 85 tools in our toolbox over governance, philanthropy, direct investing, and public investments. What do you want to do? And they say, well, we're thinking we'd like to do a loan to a nonprofit, an investment into Awista. And they said, what about a $50,000 grant and a $100,000 2% loan? And I said, that's amazing. But two things, you're in a full spectrum fellowship, not a bifurcated capital fellowship. And shouldn't we go talk to Awista and ask them what they actually want and need? And they said, absolutely. They're the most lovely brother and sister. They said, drive on up to Longmont, Colorado, put us on Zoom, have an open-ended conversation, explain full spectrum negative 100% capital. And we did. And I was like, Crystal, what do you really need? And I said, for every $100 you bring in the door, they said, we need $25 of grants and $75 of 2% loans. And I said, Okay. And I put it through my little full spectrum calculator. I'm like, you need negative 24% return investment, which before this minute meeting me, you would have thought that's a horrible return. But a negative 24% return investment is 76% increase to giving your money away. We go back to the brother and sister and say, they need negative 24% money. I said, what were you offering them? 50 at negative 100 of a grant, 100 at 2. That's 150,000 at negative 32%. They don't need negative 32. They need negative 24. Do you own any private prisons or something horrible in the stock market you want to sell? What would you like to get on your stock market portfolio this year? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 6? Give me $40,000, divest out of the stock market, blend it with a $100,000 2% loan and a $50,000 grant. Now we'll be able to give them $190,000 at negative 24% return, and you still get market rate returns on all 3 of your buckets.
That is so incredible. Mahalo for sharing all of that with us. We're so fortunate to have you on this panel today.
No, thank you for having me.
Mahalo, Stephanie.